on planning future abstract concepts and distant goals. To give you some idea, some perspective of what sort of like the adolescent brain is going through and what the teenager is going through at that time. So in addition to this, the prefrontal cortex also helps people to understand and relate to each other. And therefore, as a consequence, in adolescence, actions, facial expressions, and responses can be misjudged. For example, if a parent shows concern to a teenager, this can be misinterpreted as anger, possibly. Worry, if they're showing worry on their faces or in their body language, this can be interpreted as something like disappointment. So it's being misinterpreted. So like how it's being perceived and how it's being interpreted are two different things. So this is really important, I think, that we grasp this, because this fundamentally is the behaviour part of the adolescent. So I really wanted to sort of like home in on this to begin with. So as the emotional and thinking parts of the brain aren't hooked up, this can make it difficult to rationalise and work through emotions. And this can lead to impulsive, irrational behaviour and difficulties in social situations. So there may be a mismatch between emotions and judgment. And this is just when their emotional and social world becomes all important. So obviously, like, their social world is their life. Teenagers, like, they're always on the phone. They want to be sort of like, recognised and accepted. And it can lead to slight issues with social anxiety as well. So to bear that in mind. So what's normal for an adolescent? Okay. Lots of changes going on. These can be slow, they can be rapid, they can be jerky, it can sort of like be a roller coaster, it can vary. What's going on for the teenager? They're feeling self-conscious. So basically they feel like they're on a stage, the world revolves around them, everybody's there, sort of like looking at them, judging them, sort of like thinking, wondering, it's all about them basically. Weirdness. So they're forming their identity. They're sort of like thinking about, okay, who am I? What am I? Who do I want to be? When they were younger, they sort of like just fitted into sort of like the parents' point of view. Now they're sort of like forming their own judgments and opinions. It's like finding out what works for them and what doesn't. They may want to start listening to heavy rock. They might want to have pink hair. It's just anything goes, and they're trying out and testing the boundaries basically. They're pulling away from parents. This is very difficult for some of us to accept. I've been there, but it's normal. It's normal health. They spend time with their peers. We're not so important. Our opinions aren't so important, but our peers and what they say is ultra important at that time. Inexperience and idealism. They have very little experience, but they think they know it all. So they just sort of, it's their opinion or no opinion at all. They just think they know it, and that's the way it is. Risk-taking, as we know, so like from the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system, risk-taking, impulsiveness, there's nothing to regulate, just like to calm them down, just like say, hey, maybe this isn't such a good idea. So the risk-taking is just part of adolescence as well. Huge changes going on, and I don't think the teenager really understands like what's going on. They're just in the throes of it all, and it's very hard for them to sort of like get to grips with it as well. So the impact of this on the family environment. So there are going to be changes in the parent-child relationship, which results in increased conflict, basically. So as the child is pulling away from parents, then the parents are sort of like there's more increased conflict. The parents back off, thinking like, whoa, what's this attitude that I'm getting? They become less directly involved in the hope that it's going to reduce the conflict. This can reduce the conflict, but then leaving less support for independence. So basically the teenager doesn't want the support, but possibly needs the support. It needs as in the attachment theory, they need the safe base with which to sort of like do the risk taking. They need the boundaries, but they just don't want it. It's just a real conflict of interest for them. And as a result of this, there'd be poor communication and unclear family roles. The parent may try and adopt like a friend relationship, but this creates unhealthy boundaries, possibly, because when boundaries do need to be put in place and rules and structure, then obviously the dynamics are very, very blurred. So that creates a problem. So then we go into what is ADHD. So we're bringing an element as well now. Not only do we have like what's going on for the teenager, all the neurodevelopmental changes that are like normal for a normal teenager, but now we have the addition of ADHD coming into the mix as well for a teenager with ADHD. So as we know, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects a person's ability to regulate behaviour and attention. So the impact of this on an adolescent. So that, as we said, the teenager with ADHD not only has normal adolescent brain development to contend with, but there may be also deficits in executive functioning, all of which occur in the frontal area of the brain. So just to appreciate, a teenager with ADHD has sort of like the delay in the development of the prefrontal cortex already, and not only that, then they also have the executive function deficits to contend with as well. So it's almost like a double whammy, which makes it very, very difficult, and just to appreciate that. So let's remind ourselves how executive functioning skills do actually help and support us. So they inhibit behaviour and they give us self-restraint. So they stop us from impulsive behaviour, basically. Self-management of time. So we have an internal clock where we can sort of like say in an hour's time, I'm going to sort of like, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then in an hour and a half, I can time myself to do X, Y, and Z. We have that control, we have that self-management of time, that internal clock. Self-organisation and problem solving. Again, executive functioning helps us with this. So we're able to sort of like organise ourselves and problems solve. We're able to think about, okay, what can I do? If I have to go to work tomorrow, how am I going to get there? What do I need to do? We have that problem solving capacity. Emotional regulation. Again, we have that through the use of sort of what helpful for us, what not for us. It's going to be conducive for me to sort of like have this argument, or in hindsight, is it better for me not to do this? And what happened last time? We have that ability to regulate our emotions. And self-motivation. Okay, so we have like this internal voice that says, come on, we can do this, we need to do this, it's good for us, it's the bigger goal, the bigger picture is there, we can do this. So we have that self-motivation. So deficits in these, for the young person with ADHD, means a lack of ability to do these things. So just to appreciate again the fact that the teenager is going through all of these developmental changes, plus having to sort of like deal with possibly some of these deficits as well. So the impact of executive functioning deficits on adolescents with ADHD. So self-controlled is delayed in developing. Therefore, even less impulse control than non-ADHD peers. Okay, so they have even less, literally less impulse control. If they want to do something, there's bang, off they go, they do it. There's nothing there, or not say nothing, but there is very little there possibly to regulate, to sort of like support them in, hey, this may not be such a good idea, because if we do this, this is what's going to happen. They require more parental monitoring and assistance. They require it, but they don't want it. And this is where we lead to the parent-teen conflict, because it's what they need. They need the support, they need the boundaries, they need the parental guidance, they need the assistance. But again, they're going to rebel against it because they're individuating, they're becoming an adult. They want less control, they want more autonomy, and they don't want mum and dad telling them what to do. They want to be their own person and be independent. They have difficulty self-motivating in the completion of boring tasks. Yes, self-explanatory. They don't want to do anything they just don't see the point in doing. They have more difficulty to do this. Difficulty managing and completing tasks and assignments. They have difficulty to organise things. They have poor internal working memory, where they don't sort of like see the point of doing things. They have difficulty to do this sort of thing. Deficits in social comprehension and social problem solving. Again, this is issues for teens. They have this, social groups. I've worked in schools. They just want to be part of a group. They're in their little cliques. They want to like identity. They want to be accepted, but at the same time, in many issues, it's a bit like they have deficits in how they sort of like interpret social communication, social interaction, etc. So there's difficulties with that too. So challenges of supporting your teen with ADHD. So school context is going to be difficult. Multiple teachers, expectation of less parental involvement. So as in like primary education, your child had one teacher for all subjects, life was easy. You saw the teacher, you saw the problems, identified the teacher could I say, I know Joe Bloggs, I know how the best way to work with this young person. Now you're working with 6 different teachers. I know the situation is different at the moment, possibly 6 different teachers, 6 different subjects. One teacher may work one style, another teacher may work another style. It's very confusing for a child and a teenager with ADHD. Teens are focused on peers and social issues, so not parents' opinions. We're not popular very much anymore. Our opinion doesn't matter so much anymore. Peers, they're all important. Their values and opinions matter much more. Academic and social demands are more complex. So teachers, society expect teenagers to become more independent. They expect them to be able to sort of like organise themselves, to do their own things, to become independent, to be in society and to function adequately, doing stuff, everything. Supervising, monitoring with minimal conflict. So these are more challenges. So we need to supervise and monitor with minimal conflict. How do we do this? This is difficult. And sorry, I'm just going to have to take a second. They need the supervision, they need the boundaries, but it's how we do this with minimal conflict, and we have to create healthy boundaries. We need to help them towards healthy independence. Okay, we need to get them to be independent young adults, but it's how we do this. And we are still important as parents, but how much they want you in their lives varies very much. They need us, but they don't necessarily want us. So basically, we need to be kind to ourselves. Moody is normal. And due to these neurodevelopmental changes, it's hard to get it right with teenagers, either with or without ADHD. It's very difficult. So here we have a typical scenario. Dad says, "How was your day?" at the dinner table to this moody teenager. "Fine." Mum says, "What did you do?" Moody teenager says nothing. So whereas when your child was 7 or 8 and you could have a nice dinner table, sit at the dinner table and have a nice meal, or you could sort of like watch a movie together and have like this family fun time. Now it's like you're meeting this moody teenager who doesn't want to speak to you, doesn't want to spend time with you, wants to be in their room, and just like on their phone and not talking. So how do we deal with that? So I want to introduce some cognitive behavioural therapy. This is the vicious cycle called where we go through thoughts, emotions and behaviour. So where thoughts cause emotions and cause behaviour. So it's a vicious cycle basically. So if we go through the scenario that we've been through before, at the dinner table, where it was like one-word answers, so the thoughts could be going on. So Dad could be thinking here, so how grateful after all we've done. Who pays your bills? What's wrong with her? Apparently it's too much to be civil for a few minutes. So those are the thoughts that's going on. Emotions, what we feel. So that sort of like connects with that. It's all interlinked. And then the emotions linked to the behaviour is how we react to that. So this is a self-perpetuating cycle. So our thoughts relate to our emotions, relate to our behaviour. And so it goes on and perpetuates. And it just creates a really unhealthy cycle and way of thinking. And going on further than that, here we go. So here's the scenario. The thought is, Okay, he could be thinking all these things, and his thoughts could be rejection. I feel like, I've done so much for you, and this is how you behave, this is how you choose to behave. Risk, you're not talking to me. Why aren't you talking to me? What's going on? What are you avoiding from telling me? And you're just playing downright rude, basically, because, it doesn't hurt to have a conversation with your dad. This could lead to feelings of anxiety, worry, irritation, or anger. Any of those and more as well. And this could lead on to things like behaving in a certain way. You could give the cold shoulder and think, if you're going to be like that, then hey, I'm going to be like that. And so the animosity grows and grows and escalates, and it becomes, again, this very unhealthy cycle. And so this perpetuates and becomes just a vicious cycle. And how do we get out of it? It becomes very, very difficult. And therefore, the distance and hostility between the teen and the parent grows, okay, which isn't helpful, and it's what neither the parent nor the teenager wants, but it just feels like they're caught in this dynamic where it just goes on, and neither knows how to get out of it, and the wall becomes higher, and the relationship breaks down. So, how about empowering and supporting parents? So I would like to invite the parents to sort of think about a new job description. So parents have a hard job. They're sort of like probably in their midlife. They're sort of like got a lot of things going on themselves. They've got a teenager. They don't understand. They really don't know how to sort of like handle and cope with this. They want a good relationship, but they don't know how to manage that. They could have elderly parents who's like they're concerned about, who's like they're worried about what's going on, especially under these circumstances. And they could have other financial issues going on. So the parents have got an awful lot going on, and it's about like how they manage that and how they sort of like just really like adapt their way of being, because otherwise they're just going to burn themselves out, and then it's going to be really, really difficult to manage anything efficiently. So I would invite you to think about a new job description for parents. So basically, where if you was when your child was about 7 or 8, if you could think that they had they went to school, they came home from school, they had dinner. This is just an example. They did their homework, and then they watched a movie. The control that you had then was probably like up here 100%, and maybe now the control that you're feeling that you have around your youngster who wants to be out and wants to be doing X, Y, and Z, you probably feel like that you're losing control. So it's about how we let the young person have that control. We do it with reasonable boundaries and in a healthy way. In the same way, whereas your anxiety probably when your child was younger was probably decreased because you knew where they were accountable to you the whole time. Now it's like decreasing, and and your anxiety is going up, because obviously you have less control about the situation. So it's about giving yourselves a break as parents and just realizing that we have to sort of like let go, and we have to sort of like think about ourselves a little bit more. So there's different parenting roles. There's director, where we like directing, and we're like telling young people what to do and how to be. There's negotiator, where you can negotiate with your young person. There is what's the other ones? Negotiator. You can be the advisor, and you can be the consultant, where you're just there to sort of like just call on every now and again as and when needed. So basically, take on an attitude adjustment where you don't take it personally. If they're having a go, if they're moody, if they're like getting really emotional, if they're getting really angry, then just think about what they're going through in their brain, what the brain adjustments, like what's going on, the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. And just think don't take it personally, because it's not a direct attack at the parent. It's a little bit like, okay, it's just normal development. It's just normal, healthy teenage development. And it's really hard, but this is the way we need to do it, just for self-preservation sometimes as well. We need to adjust our way of thinking a little bit. So we need to manage and let go. So we need to create healthy boundaries with reasonable monitoring. They still need that foundation, and especially teenagers with ADHD, they do need the scaffolding, they do need the support. They don't want it, but they do need that reasonable monitoring still to support them to healthy adolescence and into adulthood. And to be able to stay in touch, open and friendly relationship as much as possible. So teens with ADHD, recognise that your teenager will be pushing towards independence and autonomy, but will still require scaffolding to support them, even if this is from a distance. And this is how we need to be strategic in what we do and how we do it. It's about just providing that scaffolding, but not sort of like being so controlling, but from a distance. So thinking about shifting our parenting style and how to do this. So we need to relax control in certain areas and increase it in others. We need to sort of like think about what's really important here and the priority. Is it getting your teenager in at 10 o'clock at night? Is that the priority? And making sure that, okay, is it so important possibly that his bedroom is untidy? What's the priority here? Talk more to them, but expect them to talk less to you. Again, going back to teenagers being moody, they're going through this phase. I don't think they even understand themselves why they're doing these things. Half the time it's just what's going on in their hormones. And they don't understand, but that's just the way they feel, and they're just reacting with that gut reaction. So talk more to them, but expect them to talk less to you. One direction at a time. Teens with ADHD tune out after 10 seconds, so don't swamp them with like loads of instructions, because it's just going to go completely over their head. Keep them safe without squashing the biological need to separate and individuate, and this is where we need to have the healthy boundaries, but we have to do that, and also give them the space to like have a say, have a certain amount of control, have their freedom, but do it in a healthy way. And it's really helpful to negotiate rather than dictate. The more we dictate, the more we're going to sort of like just keep bashing against that brick wall, and they're going to be rebelling and sort of like reacting to that. So to negotiate and give them choices rather than dictate that's the way it is, that's not going to be very helpful. How to do this, how to shift gear. So develop reasonable expectations. Don't expect too much. Especially teenagers with ADHD, are the expectations that you're asking, are they sort of like, are you asking too much? So like bearing in mind their executive functioning deficits, are they able to do those things? If you're asking them to sort of like, for example, complete an assignment in a 3-hour assignment, would you expect them to do that without any sort of like scaffolding, so like breaking that down, how you're going to help them to do that? Would that be a reasonable expectation for somebody to do that, a teenager with ADHD? Pick your battles wisely. Again, the 10 o'clock scenario, getting your son in at 10 o'clock, what's more important, doing that or getting his room tidy? So ignore the aggravating, mild, annoying little things that really are annoying but very minor in the grand scheme of things, and focus on the larger issues that need to be addressed. Let them think what you want them to do was a good idea. Strategic thinking. Okay, so you need to turn things around and put it down so that they think, hey, you know, they thought that they came up with the idea. It's a good one to choose. Give choices, not ultimatums. Okay. Again, they want some control in what they're doing, what they're saying, and how they can be. They don't want to be told, because they're just going to sort of like just say, no, not interested. They need to be given choices. Catch them being good, and this is something we're going to go into a bit more in detail in a second. We need to sort of like positive reinforcement, praise. This is where we need to catch them being good and reinforcing that. We need to start with a good relationship. We can develop on the good relationship, the positive praise, and then from then we can start to bring in all the rules and behaviour charts, etc., that we, if possible, we can do that with. Start thinking in terms of problem solving. So if you know there's going to be a problem, if you can sort of like see a behaviour that's happening again and again and again, then how about just thinking like, what's the cause of this? What can we do to solve this? And get your teenager involved in problem solving. This is going on. How can we solve it? They will feel important, and they will feel included to be part of that. So positive communication, make positive one-to-one time a habit. This is really, really crucial to forming that good relationship where you can then negotiate and get rules and structure in place. Before you can make any headway against defiance, shift your attention away from negative and catch your teenager being good and offer praise. So it's reinforcing that positive relationship and the positive praise. Start replacing negative with positive attention to change the tone of interactions. I think we get so caught up as parents, like focusing on what hasn't been done as opposed to what has been done. And it's even the small things, the little things that we sort of like we should try and pick up on a little bit, just to sort of like appreciate that the small things that they do. Break a cycle of negativity by spending quality time together, by spending time together outside usual situations. Again, even this could be just like if you're taking your child to a friend's house, 15-minute car journey, just spend that quality time together. Don't ask questions, don't sort of like ask them what's going on, try and just like quiz them. Just appreciate the time you're spending together and just find some common ground where you can actually sort of like spend that quality time together. And translate your positive attitude into effective praise. Okay, so this is really, really important. And it's turning around the dynamics. Teen defiance is normal, but that doesn't make it fun. Certainly doesn't. So use praise to win over your teen. When you're busy, and just these are examples, when you're busy and your teen is interrupting you with a question, other disruption, stop what you're doing and thank him for not disturbing you. So notice the small things that they do, okay? Anytime your teen volunteers to do something helpful, be sure to thank her for no matter how small it is. An example of this, your teenager comes in and takes a dog for a walk without being asked. That's massive. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. You did that without having to be asked. I really do appreciate that. Thanks. If your teen starts to do what you ask, immediately praise them for complying. Praise effort rather than results. So no longer completely at the mercy of your teen's defiance, you're starting to motivate them and share the tone in your household in which your teen will be inclined to apply. At the very least, you fill the household with positive feedback, which is all good. And it's really, it just creates a better atmosphere for the whole family. How to set up compliance. This is really a very good strategy. So try and set up opportunities to praise your teen by making offers they can't refuse, and then go out of your way to praise your young person. Even the simplest request, if it doesn't seem onerous, to the teen, it's still a request. When she obeys it, praise her. Before long, the connection between complying and the praise gets internalized and becomes more automatic. So here's some examples. Why don't you tell them the football game is about to start? So do you see how like it's something that the teenager would want to do, but you're making it into a command for them to comply anyway. It's you're setting up that compliance. So go get yourself a snack, something they would probably want to do anyway, but you're making it into sort of like a command which they're inclined to do. Try on my new earrings. They'll probably look good with that top. Tell Dad the hilarious story you told me today. So you're eliciting that compliance. You're getting them, setting them up to do something that they would normally do anyway, and then you're praising them for it. So it's a really good start in setting up rules. Motivation strategies for teens with ADHD. Obviously, they're lacking through the executive function deficits. This is a deficit. So we need to. So teens essentially want the same four things: through motivation. They want the chance to do what adults do. They're becoming independent. They want to be us. They want to be adults. So they want the chance to do what we do. They want the chance to make their own choices and decisions, to have their opinions valued, and they do want to decide what rules apply and how. So what I would suggest is when you're trying to sort of like create sort of like this healthy relationship, use strategies like house rules, use strategies like family meetings. Definitely house rules. It's like what are the house rules in this house, what works and what doesn't work. But have the family meeting where you get the teenager to have their voice, where they can make their have their opinion heard and make their rules, and you can negotiate, and they're more likely to comply then with the house rules that you're putting in place. The challenge is to use these central desires wisely when working to motivate a teenager to move towards adulthood and to take on more independence. And basically what you're doing is you're training your teenager to be independent in adulthood. So they're making their own choices, they're making their own decisions, and they're learning the skills to bring into adulthood. Let them have their say. So when parents give the reason, because I told you so, they're creating a really demotivating environment. Where's the incentive? Where's the meaning? If anything, they're just going to rebel against that. So give your teenager a say in what and how things are done. If your teenager has had a say in the setting of the agenda and a timetable, they're much more motivated to participate. Developmentally, teenagers are seeking to establish themselves as their own person, independent from their parents. Is it any wonder that being asked to conform to a parent's agenda is demotivating? And that's why I suggest that the house rules, family meetings, contracts, all these strategies are very, very useful for teenagers. And house rules and contracts are sort of like quite a thing. Contracts as adults in society, in our workplace, so they may feel like, hey, I'm on board with this because it's not a childish thing, it's not a reward chart, it's more of an adult thing that they're taking on board and becoming involved in, and they're having a say in it, which is really important. Set the tone. So from the start, make sure that your teen understands what it is you want him to accomplish, something that benefits him. So together, focus in on something that he wants you to work on, and together find a way to make it possible. He's more likely to participate and feel motivated to actually feels like he's a partner in the process instead of simply following orders. So an example of this would be, okay, he wants to learn to drive. So he really wants to do that. So you can help him, you can support him. Okay, you don't want to take over, you don't want to say, right, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But you can put the scaffolding in place, you can put the accommodations in place. How would you do this? What do you need to do? How many weeks do we need to think about this? So you're scaffolding, you're breaking down because of the executive functioning deficits that he doesn't have the capacity to maybe manage all of this in his own right. You're supporting him, but you're not actually telling him what to do. So you're giving him the instructions and you're supporting him to take responsibility, which would be really helpful. What's in it for me? This is the most motivational ingredient of all. If it's learning to drive, hey, he passes his test. What a fantastic thing. If your teenager understands the value to them of the task, you would have little problem motivating them to do it. It speaks for itself with the driving. Link completion of chores and homework to privileges. So basically, if it's something he doesn't want to do, like chores, has to be done, it's part of life, it's part of society, he's going to be an adult, he needs to do it. So you need to think about, okay, what's going to motivate to do that? And if it's privilege, even if it's just like, hey, let's get your homework done, after that we'll kick the ball for half an hour in the garden. That could be something, that could be a privilege, just something, or just a reward for sort of like sticking at it and praising him as well for just doing that and sticking at it. Teenagers with ADHD, again, sticking with a piece of homework that's really, really boring, it's not motivating at all. So there has to be some sort of like some link there where they feel the rewards. Promoting independence. So help teens with ADHD to remember. Teaching your teens to be organised and remember, teaching your teens to be organised and remember is what parents need to do. Work with your teen to develop methods of remembering that don't require you to be involved, okay? To do this, we need the scaffolding to make it happen. So visual aids, colour-coded routines, there's lots of stuff out there that can help with this. There's lots of apps out there, loads of stuff, or timetables, post-it notes. If timetables, colour-coded routines are a little bit babyish, so like for the teenager, post-it notes, make it fun, make it enjoyable, so like make it random, and place them in obvious places. Just get them to like involved organisation, just in a good way, just those little things, but very, very strategic almost. Help your teens create routines in their weeks that help them to establish patterns. So you're creating, again, the scaffolding but you're helping them to establish themselves into adulthood so that when they go out in the big wide world, they have these strategies to use in place already. Leave little hints around the house and about a task that needs to be completed. Don't make it heavy. You don't have to nag them. We don't have to sort of like lecture them. We can just leave little hints around and get them to complete that. And get them to use an app or program on the computer phone as part of the learning process. As I said, there's loads of stuff out there these days that can make it fun and more interesting than just saying, hey, I keep telling you to do this, you're not doing this. So, yeah. Make the task achievable. Okay, so again, ADHD, we're thinking of the executive functioning deficits. Sometimes it's the size of the task that teenagers with ADHD find hard. It isn't that they don't want to do it, but it's rather they don't know where to start and it all looks too hard. So we need to support them to break it down. How can I help you? What needs to be done here? How can we do this? Break the task up into a series of smaller, achievable tasks with shorter deadlines. Teenagers with ADHD often struggle with long-term planning, but respond to more immediate time horizons. So, for example, if there was a 3-hour essay to be done, okay, how do we break this down? How can we do it step by step? It's like opening a door and you see this big mountain ahead of you. How would you climb that? You can't. You need to break it down. How do we do this? You break it down and make it more achievable. By offering rewards for your effort, improvement, or participation, you're reinforcing your teenager the value of trying and perseverance rather than rewarding the fact of giving up or resigning. And it's not about like getting an A star in so like maths or English. It's about the perseverance. It's about the trying that you're sort of rewarding them for, the perseverance. And make it fun. Okay, so if your teenager can learn something by playing games, watching a movie, or searching the internet, then encourage them to do it. If they need to sort of like research something for school, and they can Google it, or they can look at YouTube and it's informative for them and it's learning through that, I would say go for it. Use technology. Using technology, any part of any task makes it instantly more appealing for young people today. So reminders for teenagers with ADHD: consistency, structure and routine is key. United front. Great if both parents can be on board. Then there's no good cop and bad cop. Share responsibility, share the load. It makes it much easier. Stay calm. So don't get emotional. Don't get brought up into sort of like all the anger and emotion, but just try and stay calm. Because the moment that your anger rises, then the teenager's going to meet that, and it's just the vicious cycle going around again. So try and stay calm. Adopt a business-like tone when discussing plans with teens. Again, don't get emotional. Don't buy into sort of like all the arguing, etc. It's business-like. Okay, and this is the way it is. If you're doing contracts, if you're doing house rules, this is the way it is. How can we work together? How can we make it happen? Teamwork. Change it up as a teens board. So, basic principles to support a teen with ADHD. Externalized time is really important. They have limited capacity for an internal clock. They can't think, okay, in half an hour's time, I'm going to get ready for bed, and then I'm going to go and have a shower. They don't have that. Half an hour to them doesn't mean anything. You need to externalize time for them. So support them with this. So whether that's an alarm on their clock, a timer, anything that works, externalize that time so that they have some understanding of what that time is, what that 30 minutes is. Make important information physical. So you need to make that, as we sort of said before, put the information out there. The working memory, the working memory is to have deficits with this. So they don't have hindsight and foresight. They don't sort of think about, okay, if I did this last time, this is how I need to do it. They have little limited capacity for organising. So they need to have all that information physical. Add artificial consequences. They have very little motivation. They don't have that internal self-talk where they're saying, right, I can do this, I need to do this. They they find this difficult, so they need the artificial consequences and motivation for you to sort of praise them and say, hey, that's a really good job, well done, fantastic. That's motivating them. You're being that voice, that internal voice for them. So use rewards before punishments. Again, you're building on that good relationship, you're building on that positive praise, and you're using rewards before punishments. We're bringing the punishments afterwards. I don't like the word punishments anyway, but we build in sort of like the consequences afterwards. If you don't do this, then this is what's going to happen. But that's how we work. We use the rewards first, and then we bring in the consequences if you don't. Make mental tasks and problem solving manual. Again, we're sort of like opening the door and we're seeing this big mountain before us. We need to sort of like break it down. We need the scaffolding. So we need like mind maps, etc. Whatever works. Technology is great these days. Make it manual so that they can actually sort of like work with it. Tactile, talk less. Act, don't yak, as Professor Russell Barkley says. He's a professor in ADHD. They don't, after a while, they just zone out. So if we keep talking and lecturing, etc., it's just going to go completely over their heads. So the more we talk less, but we just act, then that's more likely to more done with a teenager. Be proactive. Anticipate and prepare for problems, situations. So if a behaviour keeps reoccurring and you think, okay, this is going around and getting nowhere, be proactive. Think about what's going on beforehand. Is this something that the teenager can't do? Is it sort of like, does he not have the skill set for this? Is it an executive functioning deficit that's like, we're not recognising? Think about it, anticipate, and think about how you can sort of like maybe make it different and what you can do to support that young person. Is it sort of like a particular behaviour? It's about thinking about what brings that behaviour about and the consequences afterwards, and how can we change that and juggle that around. Transition planning. Think about like what's going to happen probably in September, what's going to happen in schools, is there a time frame? Remember the internal clock. So we need to think about when's this going to happen. So the teenager, if it's getting anxious, we need to sort of like think about this, we need to plan this. Do we need a calendar to sort of like time about when this is going to happen, how long it's going to be, what's going to happen then, how are we going to manage it, what's going to happen? Do we need to sort of like contact the school? Do we need to put something in place there? We're planning for that transition. Increase accountability to others. Again, the executive function deficits, if the consequences have to be immediate to support the executive functioning deficits. So if there's a reward or if there's a consequence, as soon as that action's been taken, we need to sort of put in that reward or that consequence. It has to be as immediate as possible. Otherwise, it just gets lost. If we sort of like said, okay, in 2 years' time, I'm going to take you to Disneyland, it means nothing. It needs to be accountable there and then, literally. And keep a sense of priorities. Think about, again, what's really important here. And for your sense of well-being as well as parents, you need to think about, okay, what's the big deal here? Okay, my teenager this is part of normal development. They are individuating, they are separating, they are becoming an adult, they are becoming independent. It's normal. My priority is, okay, I've got to look after myself. I've got parents, myself. It's about what's really important here and about looking at your own self and thinking about, okay, am I overreacting here? How can I let go of this? And how can I sort of look at it in a more coherent way? And keep a disability perspective. And by this, I mean ADHD. We need to think about this. It's an invisible disability as such. A child who is in a wheelchair, who can't walk, they have ramps, they have hoists, they have accommodations made for them. And in the same way, a young person, a teenager with ADHD needs those accommodations that we're talking about, the scaffolding, to support them to become the best they can be and to reach their potential. Okay, so the future is exciting and anxiety-provoking all in one. I've just given some very, very basic strategies here. There's lots more, but I don't want to overwhelm you. But it's not about curing the teenager, because it's a normal development. Basically, it's what they're going through. It's normal stuff. It's about lessening the chaos and the conflict. And these are just some of the very positive strategies that can be used to support that. And yeah, I think we're just about done. That's the end. So I don't know if you're there, Ken. I hope you found it helpful.
Sorry, there I am now. Sorry, I had to press the right buttons. No, that was great, Terri. Thank you very much for that. To be honest, there's a huge amount of questions already in the Q&A box. We've had loads of questions beforehand. So let's start on, you start off with one that comes up on a regular basis. There's 3 or 4 questions in this one, so just everybody need to pay attention just for this. But it just does show how it is for parents. So the question was, hi Terri, can I ask how you deal with defiance in teenagers? How much of it is teenage years related and how much of it is to do with ADHD? For example, my son has started to use reverse psychology on us. When we threaten to take the PlayStation away, for example, if he's disrespectful or doesn't do his jobs, now he's saying, if we don't give him the PlayStation back, he won't do the jobs. And what do you do when you tell them that they don't care about school, homework, sports, etc.? It's a complete lack of motivation. Is this normal behavior? But then they care very much about their technology. Any advice would be greatly appreciated.
Gosh, there's a lot there, isn't there? I always believe that they say they don't care, but they actually do care, and they're just trying it out. Right, okay, let's break this down a little bit. So, demotivation, I think some of it is normal teenage behaviour. And again, some of it is possibly ADHD. It's very hard without knowing the full context of the individual to know. What's the question, Ken? What? Well,
I think there's 2 main questions within that, and I think the reason why we started off that one is, I think it shows how the overload of ADHD and teenagers is to parents. So there's a couple of questions in there. One is about defiance in teenagers, and the other one's about motivation.
Sorry, the first one is about defiance.
Defiance.
Yeah. Okay. Defiance. Okay. So I would break it down, and I would think about again. It depends, because if you've sort of got it depends on what's been tried and what hasn't been tried. But if the defiance is so escalated, it has the parent got to such a stage where they sort of like give up. Right. So there's this situation where the teenager doesn't want to do something, so the parent says, right, okay, you need to do it. The teenager then sort of like escalates the behaviour and says, no, I'm not going to do it. The parents say, right, okay, you need to do it, or X, Y, and Z will happen. The teenager escalates the behaviour, and then the parent says, you need to do this, and then the door slams, the teenager goes to the bedroom, and the parents give up, and they just think, oh, I'm done, I can't bother, this is really like, this is too much for me. So that's reinforcing negative behaviour. So that the teenager now thinks like, okay, by doing this, I have got my own way. So that's so the parents in a way are reinforcing the negative behaviour. So you need to break it down and think, hang on, I don't know if this is what's happening, but I'm just thinking like what's going on here. So for me, I think I would start from scratch, and I would start with building a positive relationship. I would think about house rules. I would think about I do something in my courses about rights, gifts, and privileges. So basically, I would sort of like say, right, okay, if this is how you're going to behave, then this PlayStation, if it was a gift, yes, that is a gift, and that you're entitled to that. But the privilege is the Wi-Fi that goes with it, or the game that goes with it. And you're going to that will be sanctioned for you. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, then this is what's going to happen. That will be taken away from you, or it would be like you can have that 10 minutes when you do X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
It's very hard because I don't know the situation, so it's very hard for me to put it into context.
Okay, just another question before Anne asked one. This is a question that comes up reasonably regularly when we talk to parents, both on the support line and in support groups. And the question is around the issue of alcohol. My son is 17 and he'll be 18 next month. He will be in 6th year in September. He's been in trouble with the guards on at least 3 occasions, drink-related, other incidents. My question is he impulsive due to ADHD, or does his impulsive tendencies increase when he drinks alcohol? If you had any advice on how to manage this, as it's been very difficult for me to keep him safe. And the parents also saying, he's going to be 18 next month, or in a couple of months. And how do you keep him safe?
I would have house rules. I would have house rules, and I would have a contract, and I would be quite strict with that. I think it's like we have the different parenting roles. I think that's when I become the dictator, and I have to say, look, this is the way. These are my house rules, and this is what goes. And if you don't like it, well, the consequences are the guardian will have to be involved, and that, as they already have been. It's natural consequences for that sort of behaviour, unfortunately, in society. That's what happens. It's very hard for parents to do. But yeah, I would certainly go down the route of like really strict house rules, a contract, and if the teenager, almost adult, doesn't abide by that, then there has to be serious consequences for that.
Is it a chicken and egg thing around the alcohol that you, as a person saying that, is it the impulsivity of the ADHD that sends them to the alcohol, or is it the alcohol makes it worse?
I'm not in a position to say that about that, Ken. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's fine. And the question?
Yeah, there's a question, Terri, here from one of our viewers tonight. It's about when your child goes through the teenage years, they may think that their peers are getting more freedom than them. And the perception may not really be accurate, but then again, it could be, given the fact that if your child has ADHD, you may need to keep a little bit tighter rein on them. So what do you say to your team when they complain about people getting more freedom and that their peers, have a little bit more freedom than them? Have you any advice on that?
I would sit down and negotiate with them what it is exactly they want, and what exactly their peer gets that they don't, and have that conversation. As you say, it may only be perceived freedom. I would have that conversation. It's the teenager is a teenager. They're having their own voice, and they want some freedom. And it depends. Again, it depends on the context. How much freedom does that individual get right now? Negotiate. It's very hard because I don't know the individual situations, but I would negotiate. I would just say, okay, what do you think is, again, house rules, contracts? What do you think is acceptable? Let's negotiate. Let's think about this. So, what does your friend get? What do you want? And let's work it out together and see what we can come up with. Yeah. Okay. It's very hard because I don't know it's very hard because I don't know the whole story. It's very difficult.
There is a couple of questions coming in on the issues of time management and working memory. So do you have any hints for, to help a teenager with time keeping and working memory?
So time management, as I said, there's apps, there's timers, there's clocks, there's so much out there at the moment. In what sort of context is that? So like for getting out to school, is that routine? Is that doing homework? It's very hard to say because I don't know the situation. Working memory, again, mind maps. There's so much information out there, Ken. It's just, if these people want to sort of email me and message me, I'm happy to send on resources, but without knowing the full context, it's very, very difficult.
Well, you see, they're all short questions, you see, so we can do what we have here in front of us. So just another question then, you might be my son is 13 who has ADHD and ODD. He's also diagnosed as gifted. He struggled to settle into primary and school, as a couple of suspensions, not engaging in class, not in completing homework. I find it frustrating to see him wasting his potential, but I don't know how to motivate him to engage with school and schoolwork. I try to set simple expectations around work with rewards and some consequences. Nothing works. He just doesn't seem to care. I'd appreciate any thoughts or suggestions you might have.
Okay, so you tried rewards and consequences. I wonder what really he does like. I would try and find out what exactly that he really is interested in and work with that. I wonder if it's quality time. It doesn't have to be necessarily like practical things. I would work with that. I would find out what really interests the child and use that. And it doesn't, again, it wouldn't be, I would break it down. I would be thinking about, like, not like if you do X, Y, and Z, then this is the goal. I would break it down, like, after 10 minutes, this is something that we can do. After another 10 minutes, okay, this, if it's too much of a thing, like if it's too big, then break it down. And after 10 minutes, then you can have this. 10 minutes, you can have this. There is a thing that Russell Barkley says it's a 10 3-minute rule. So for every 10 minutes that a teenager does something, then they have a 3-minute reward for that, or a 3-minute time break, movement break or whatever. So along the lines of that, I would break it down if it's a large task that's being asked of.
Okay, Anne, do you have a question there?
Yeah, there's a number of questions, Terri, around the whole area of aggression in teenagers. Specifically, some people have asked, is aggression common in an ADHD teen? But maybe you could just address the whole area. Somebody else has asked, is aggression and lashing out physically common, particularly for a teen with ADHD? Maybe you could comment on that.
I think it's quite individual. I do think it's quite individual. It depends on the child themselves. But from my experience, I have heard of that. And again, I put it down to the impulsivity and the limbic system, where it's all kicking off and firing, and there's very little regulation there to control that behaviour. And it's about how you do that and how you sort of like help to calm the person down. You teach them the skills, you teach them the breathing, you teach them to walk away. It's how they sort of like, you can do these charts where you can sort of like help them to regulate their feelings, their emotions, and help them to support them to know when through their body, when they're sort of like reaching that limit and they need to take control of their feelings and their anger. But from my experience, yes, I have heard of several ADHD young people who are quite aggressive.
You also talked about in your presentation, Terri, about backing off sort of to reduce conflict. But somebody has asked here, then how do you actually get them to do the jobs at home if you're, and to be involved in family life? If you're trying to, on one hand, back off, not to overwhelm them. On the other hand, then, how do you encourage them to get more involved in the family life?
Communicate, build a relationship, and I would say to get some house rules and do the family meeting. It doesn't have to be long, 10, 15 minutes family meeting, let everybody have a say and say, right, okay, these chores need to be done. That's a non-negotiable fact. What do you want? We can negotiate on which chores you do, and that we can sort of like decide on that, and they can have that say. And then you're getting them on board. And if necessary, then you can actually go like get them to complete a contract. I've got some I can send out to people if they need that, where they can just like say, I agree to do this, and as a consequence, if I don't do this, X, Y, and Z will happen. If I do this, then this is what will happen. And that seems to work. But it's about negotiation, because a teenager doesn't want to be told what to do, but they will negotiate with you, and especially if it's something that they don't mind doing so much.
Okay, thanks for that. Just a question. It was a very short question that came in, but I just we can expand on the question that was there. How do you help a child or coax a child not to drop out of school? Now, could I just ask you just to frame the answer in? There's two sides to that. There is the old thing that's always said, it takes 3 people to mind or bring up a child with ADHD, and that was 2 parents and 1 teacher. So obviously you just accept there has been an awful lot of chat of people coming back saying, I'm a single parent, so we understand, society has changed in that regard as well. But in terms of, a child in school and struggling, lots of difficulties there and getting to keep going to school, what would you ask the parent to do, and what would you ask the school to do?
I would ask the parent and the child. I would ask the parent and the school ideally to work together. I would support the child. I would ask the parent to support the child in making sure that everything was in order to get the child to school, as in routine, structure, time. And obviously they're reluctant. I would want to know about their anxiety. I would encourage the parents to talk about any anxieties, anything that's going on at the school. I would talk about the friendships that are going on there. What do they like? What do they don't like about school? And then I would get in touch with the teacher, and I would speak to them and just have a conversation about what's going on at school, how the child is behaving at the school, any concerns there, how they're, what's the dynamics going on within the classroom or the playground. I would get a full picture, and then I would definitely work with the school and sort of come up with something that if there's some reluctance, then it just feels that there's something that's not quite right. And I would like to get to the bottom of that. I think as a parent and as a parent, and as the teacher, I just think that the two could work together to find out what it is. Where's the anxiety? What's the reluctance? School can be a good place, but it can also be a not so good place for soon young people. So I would explore that, and I would get to the bottom of that, I think, and work with that.
Was there anything specifically, because obviously just one of the things about school, or the difference between sort of primary and secondary school is, in secondary school you may have 10 different teachers, and they all have a different approach. So how do you get a coherent support system put in a school when you have sort of 10 different teachers talking to a child and saying different things?
Yeah. I don't know. It's difficult. I think if I was a parent, I would actually go into the school and just say, my child is not wanting to go into school for some reason. I've explored it with them. There's something going on, and I would ask them to look into it. It's difficult, I know, but I would explore that with the school. As you say, it's very difficult with 6 different teachers, but something's going on there. I would look at the days where the child is more particularly anxious, what lessons. I would get them to complete a diary. I would find out ways of identifying what it actually is about that school, that day, that lesson where the child isn't happy and what the reluctance is. There's something going on there, whether it's a friendship issue, an anxiety around something. But I would endeavour to get to the bottom of that through just keep going.
Okay.
Keep
obviously,
trying.
Yep. That's fair. Now, things like diaries are a good suggestion. Interesting, again, a short question just in the Q&A from non-attorney. How do you help your teenager understand to learn and live with their condition?
It depends. That's a very very choice thing. Some parents don't want their teenagers to know, some do. I think it's about awareness, and I think it's about understanding and recognizing the strengths and the gifts and the qualities that ADHD can bring. And I think it's about focusing on that, and recognizing that there are some areas where the young person may need some support and some help with that, but overall concentrate on the strengths and use those and all the good things that it can bring. Okay,
so thanks for just another question. This one that comes up on a regular basis, and a few there in the Q&A in the chat, and it's a question around screen time. Obviously, there is a question, that should people with ADHD use screens on a regular basis or use them for long periods of time, and then should you use them as sort of a reward in terms of behaviour?
Again, going back to the gifts, rights and privileges, screen time should be a privilege in a way, and I think it's very useful if it can be used as such. So if they do certain chores and then they sort of get an hour on screen time after that, then that's absolutely fine. Again, it's moderating, and each family to their own, but these are unprecedented times, but I'm just thinking if the child has completed their homework, and the reward would be, or the consequence of that would be, hey, okay, so you get an hour's screen time. I think that would be okay. Moderating, but yes, but also it's about putting it in as a reward to for the behaviour.
Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah, Amanda has asked a question there on the chat. That her daughter is on Ritalin, but she hates study and schoolwork. And she herself always wanted her daughter to go to university, but now she thinks it's an unreasonable hope. Should she give up, or is there anything you could recommend, any tips or things you could recommend to help her be more motivated?
What are the child's strengths? What does she want to do? I would be looking at that, and I wouldn't say university is out of the question, but maybe there's something that sparks the young person's creativity that could be used in the university, and I would go with that, because that's where the motivation will be, something that they enjoy and where the creativity is, and where they're motivated.
Okay. Just another one, it's sort of a general question that's coming in. It's in 3 or 4 different ones. It can relate back particularly to ADHD, but it's the issue of, teenagers and sleep. How much sleep do they need? And obviously just we're looking at, in the current situation where they're not in a structured situation, they don't have to get up at, 7:30 in the morning to go to school, and staying later into the night. So how would you manage sleep for teenagers?
Teenagers need 9.5 to 9 3/4 hours sleep. They need that so the hormones can produce and function, etc. So that's what they need. I do think structure and routine is important even in these times. So I think that's my very succinct answer to that. They do need the sleep. They do need 9. I know very many teenagers don't get that from my experience. But I do keep reminding them that is what they need, because otherwise they're going to end up grumpy. They're going to be lacking in energy. The hormones are not just being able to be produced, because they need that time in the sleep pattern just to be produced, etc. So it's important that they do get that sleep. Structure and routine, I would recommend that's kept, because and plus ADHD children, they need the routine and the structure.
Okay. Does Anna or Tricia have any questions? I'd like to go. No, just sorry. There was another question there. I always like asking this one. Even for teenagers or younger children, should I tell my recently diagnosed son he has ADHD?
I think that's a personal choice, isn't it? And I think that's a dilemma that many parents have. You have to weigh up the pros and cons. How will the person react? Will they think of it as a negative? Will they think of it as a positive? Again, if you draw on the strengths, which I would advise, it can be a positive thing. It's a very personal choice for the parents to decide on that. Some decide to, some decide not to. I don't think it's in my place to say one thing or the other, to be honest with you. I think it's a personal choice.
But obviously, just I'm going to push you just a little bit on it, in that if you don't tell the child, and if you don't tell the school particularly, they don't get access to the services that they require.
Yeah, I agree.
Except it's a personal choice.
Yeah, I agree. And I was working recently with a family, and the child didn't know, and then she found out, and she was actually quite relieved to know. So on that score, then I would say that it's a positive thing. It doesn't necessarily mean if the child doesn't know, that the school doesn't need to know. But yeah, I do think it's a personal choice. But personally, I think it's good to know. I think because once the child knows, then they have a better understanding. They can understand, okay, so that's why I have difficulty with this. That's why I struggle with this. It all makes complete sense now. So I think it's a bonus. I think it's an asset to do that. But again, that's my personal opinion. I think it has its benefits and its advantages, and then obviously the school can work with that. But I do the situations where the school have known but the young person hasn't known. So that's again, it's personal choice.
Oh, I understand it's a personal choice, but
it's difficult.
It's a difficult choice, but you just have to see how it goes. Just a very short question there again. What could you advise you to give to an ADHD starting in a new school?
Well, okay. I take it this is secondary school. Be yourself. Yeah. I think, there's lots of qualities that can be drawn upon. For me, it's just a normal teenager starting school. Obviously, they're going to be anxious. They're going to be like worried. I think it's for the parent to go through all of that with the young persons. Like, what are the worries? What are the concerns? What are you likely to come up against? What's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? How can we make this the best day ever? How can we support you with this? How contact the school beforehand and find out what's going to happen so that the child is informed beforehand. Provide scaffolding as much as possible to sort of like support the child to get into the school, so that they're as much prepared as they possibly can about what's going to happen that day. I would chat to the school, and I would sort of like see if there anybody there that they could sort of like buddy up with a young person to sort of like support them. I think it's an amazing adventure. It can be an amazing adventure. It just depends how it's tackled.
Okay. I just say, does Nicola want to jump in there on transition programs?
Yeah, just on just letting everybody, because you're all parents of teens and there are teens at home, there's quite a lot going on over the next while when it comes to support for teens and parents of teens. We have a parent support group set up, and it is going to be starting the beginning of next month. It actually started during this month, so it's coming up next month, and just keep an eye on our website. And it's specifically for parents of teens kind of from 12 onwards, and it was working really well. We also have transition programs. A lot of questions coming lately about transition into either first year or moving up into different years. So we have an occupational therapist, Gwen Cantwell, and she'll be coming on board and doing some evening events on Monday evening starting in August. Again, we'll have them advertised well in advance, but we'll have transition program from 6th class to first year, from third year going into third year into the exam year, from third year going into TY, which is a massive transition for a lot of kids, and then obviously they leave in third year, and how to get the kids back on track to come out of transition year and actually move forward with getting back into exams and studying the teens. So we have a lot coming up over the summer, and just keep an eye on the website.
Okay. Anne, did you have a question?
Yeah, there was a lot of follow-on, Terry, to the question about sleep, where a lot of people are wondering if sometimes their teens struggle to actually fall asleep at night. So if they're to get their 9.5 hours sleep, does it count if it's a lie-in, or should they still be getting up early? Or what would you say about that? Should you try and get your teen up early in the day?
I think under the circumstances, like with no school, I think it's no hard and fast rule about lying in, etc. I just feel like, okay, the 9.5 hours sleep, yes, it is recommended. But lying in afterwards, if the child wants to lie in and read a book or to like listen to music, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just about making sure that they get that, the solid sleep that's recommended. I know it doesn't happen in 9 times out of 10 with young people, but that is what's recommended. But lying in afterwards, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. But then again, I do feel like the structure is really helpful. It just keeps the teenager on track and gives them something to go. And just some motivation, etc. So yeah.
Okay.
And would you have, sorry Ken, just keep going here. Would you have any apps or any Instagram pages or anything like that you'd recommend for parents of teenagers to use or to recommend to their teenager to follow?
Absolutely. If you want to get in touch with me, I can absolutely. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay, would you be able to share that with us, Terry? And we might push it out so that we can reach everybody with that information rather than each of them, trying to contact you.
Yep,
that would be super.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No worries. Yep.
Elijah?
Yeah, back to you, Ken.
There, guys, plug back in. But just a question there was from Brona, and it's an interesting question just in terms of particularly, I'm not saying boys more than girls, but in terms of physical activity, they're boys, they've got boundless energy, they're teenagers, they've got boundless energy. What part do you see as having physical activity as part of let's not call it a behavioural management program?
behavioural management program. I think physical exercises is really important, especially for the ADHD, executive functioning. It's like releases and it creates, it replenishes the fuel tank, so to speak. As part of behaviour management, I'm not really sure on that point.
Well, no, it's just in that, some teenagers are teenagers with ADHD and being teenagers, and they're not burning off enough energy, so they can get pretty hyperactive within the house. So you can get them out either, on the trampoline or going swimming, wherever it happens to be, to burn off that hyperactivity so that they're calmer when they come home.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I would say that it's very important. I don't really know what the question is there. I would agree with that. It's very important.
Okay. Just another quick question there, and one from Louise. If you have ADHD yourself as a parent, how do you give them structure when you're struggling yourself?
That is difficult. That is extremely difficult. It depends what family support you have. I would suggest, if you're a single parent or if you have a partner, to get some support with that from the extended family members, maybe. Support from ADHD Ireland with that. Exactly. The support out there is, but definitely you'd need support, and it'd be helpful for that. Yes.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
I was just going to say, sorry, Ken, I was just going to say in there about we have the teen parent support group, and it'd be well worth coming along, Louise, and having a chat, because there's other parents in the same situation as yourself.
Did Anne have a question there? Or?
There's a question there, again, a very short one. Does medication change the personality? I don't know if that's specifically a question that you can answer, Terri, but
no, I'm not really. He's not really. I'm not really qualified to answer that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Maybe if that person wants to contact us, we can look into that. At info@adhdireland.ie, or give us a call. We'll pop the details up on the chat.
There we go. Okay, well, I think we've gone through most of the questions there. We'll just a question there from G10947. Does ADHD manifest itself differently in boys and girls, particularly in teenage years?
Yes, I would say it does. Mostly because, well, I guess for boys, their aggression can escalate quicker, whereas for girls they can internalize their feelings, and rather than it becoming aggressive. So yes, I would say it's different for boys and girls. And as I said, with boys, they tend to be physically out there. For girls, they internalize their feelings and their emotions, and that can lead to other mental health issues, as well as obviously the ADHD diagnosis. But yes, no, I'd say yes, definitely. It's different for both. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions there. Can Terri give examples of the immediate privileges and consequences that you would use to help a teenager with ADHD?
It depends on the person, the teenager, and what they are into. So, for example, if they were into a PS4, so I would say a privilege would be that you can play on a game for an hour, and a consequence would be if you didn't do a certain job, then, or if you didn't go to bed on time, then that hour would be taken away. You would lose that hour. I do this on my course, where it's we do lots of different works and different strategies and techniques. But yes, I would say a privilege would be that, or a privilege could be an hour kicking the ball with dad. It's quality time, isn't it? That can speak volumes. It could be a trip to McDonald's. A privilege could be that, and a consequence could be, okay, you lose that privilege because you didn't do this. So that's the sort of thing that I would be thinking about.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that. I think we're just time for one more question, and I think Anne has that. But I would like to say thank you to everybody. And I have to say, in all the events that we've done, this is the one we've got the most questions on. The Q&A and the chat box has exploded with questions, and that just, I think, it shows us how parents are exasperated with this issue and how difficult people are finding it out there. So just want to say thank you to Terri for giving all the talk and the information, and obviously just Anne has put up our contact details there. But before we go, I think Anne has one last question.
Okay, the last question then for the evening. Is there any particular types of schools that are better for children with ADHD? So mixed schools as opposed to single sex schools, what would you recommend?
Oh, I'm going to give the same answer, and I'm going to say it very much depends on the individual child as to what they like. Some work better in mixed schools, some work better in the same sex schools. It very much depends. I can't, unless I know the child and it's like, you know, working in that context, then it's really hard to say. It's honestly, there's no one size fits all. I can't say like, yes, okay, mixed school is the best one for that, you know, for everybody, because I don't know that child. So I can't say. I'm sorry, I really can't be more precise.
Sorry, there was just someone there, but didn't say, could I ask a question from earlier, but I can't see it.
I typed an answer back to that question, recommending the person. Do you want me to ask the question of Terri?
Yeah.
Terri, it was just a question. I thought maybe it was more specific to ADHD Ireland, so I typed an answer to say to the person to contact us, but it's just a question about is it common for a child with ADHD to have head tics? And if so, have you any recommendation as to how to deal with that? This person's son, Alex, has developed a particularly bad head tic over a 2-year period. And when we ask him, he can't explain it, only to say that he feels like his head needs to move, and it can be very upsetting to see. And this person also thinks that his peers have seen him do it and is afraid of the backlash, the teasing, and so on.
Sorry, Anne, so the question is?
The question is, have you any advice as to how to deal with head tics?
Okay.
And is it common with ADHD? And in terms of that side of the question, I've just asked them to contact us for more information on comorbidities in terms of ADHD, but maybe you could advise in terms of how to deal with that for the child.
I think if that person wants to contact me, then I'll look up and I'll find some resources that could be helpful for that, if that's what they want to do.
Okay. I think Terri's details are there on the slides in front of you. So it's Lloyd's S Foundation @gmail.com. Any questions, if you want to send them on to Terri, I'm sure she'll be happy to get back to you. So thank you very much for everybody for coming along tonight. We appreciate it. Thanks to Terri as well. And as always, thanks to Tricia, Anne and Nicola for keeping us on the straight and narrow as we go along during these events. As I say, we always have some other events coming up. If you have a look at our website, ADHD Ireland, there's details on that. So again, thank you very much for coming along, and we look forward to seeing you again very shortly.